If you believe money can buy anything, then you have never stood in a place where money has no meaning. Ethan Carter believed in systems, in numbers, in control. He believed that everything, every piece of land, every business, every decision could be measured, optimized, and improved. And for most of his life, he had been right. Until the black SUV rolled slowly along a narrow dirt road, its polished surface reflecting the golden sunlight that stretched endlessly across the rice fields. Dust rose gently behind the tires, hanging in the warm air before dissolving into the vast, quiet landscape. From inside the car, Ethan Carter stared out the window. Endless yellow, water glistening between rows of rice plants like thin mirrors catching the sky. A land that seemed to breathe on its own, slow, patient, untouched by the sharp edges of steel and glass that defined his world. To him, it felt inefficient, untapped, full of potential. His mind instinctively began to calculate. Irrigation optimization, mechanized harvesting, export scaling. Numbers formed silently behind his calm expression, as naturally as breathing. The car finally came to a stop. The engine fell silent, and with it, the last familiar sound of control. For a moment, there was nothing. No traffic, no distant hum of machines. Only the soft whisper of wind brushing through the rice fields, like a quiet conversation he wasn't meant to understand. Ethan opened the door. The heat greeted him instantly, not aggressively, but completely. It wrapped around him, clung to his skin, seeped into his clothes. This wasn't the filtered, conditioned air he was used to. This was raw, uncontrolled, alive. He stepped out. His leather shoes sank slightly into the uneven ground, the softness catching him off guard. He shifted his weight, instinctively searching for stability, but the earth beneath him refused to be perfectly flat, perfectly predictable. Immediately, he felt it. This place wasn't built for him. He straightened his posture, adjusted his suit jacket, smoothed the invisible wrinkles on his sleeve. These were small rituals of control, habits formed in boardrooms where every detail mattered, where perception was power. But here, they felt strangely unnecessary. The air was thick with humidity, pressing against him in a way he couldn't ignore. A drop of sweat formed at his temple, then another. Within minutes, the crisp perfection of his appearance began to fade. There was no air conditioning here, no controlled environment, no glass walls separating him from discomfort. Only reality. He exhaled slowly, scanning the horizon. At first, all he saw was land. Rows upon rows of rice stretching into the distance. A canal cutting through the fields like a quiet vein. A few scattered figures moving far away, small against the vastness. Then his eyes adjusted, and he saw her. She stood among the rice plants, half hidden by their height, as if she belonged to them. A young woman. Her movements were steady, deliberate, unhurried. She bent slightly, gathered a handful of rice, and cut it cleanly. Then again, and again. There was no wasted motion, no rush, no hesitation. The rhythm of her work seemed older than anything Ethan had ever known, older than his companies, his deals, even the cities he had helped build. She wore a simple brown alba-billet, the fabric soft and practical, shaped by use rather than design. A non-la rested on her head, casting a gentle shadow across her face, shielding her from the relentless sun. She didn't look up, didn't pause, didn't acknowledge the presence of the expensive car, the stranger in a tailored suit, or the invisible weight of money and power he carried with him. And that was what caught Ethan's attention. In his world, presence meant reaction. People adjusted their tone, their posture, even their thoughts when he entered a room. Conversations shifted, decisions paused. But here, nothing changed. The wind continued to move through the rice. The water continued to shimmer, and she continued to work. Unaffected, uninterested, unaware, or perhaps simply unconcerned. Ethan took a step forward, his shoes brushing against the edge of the rice plants. Still, she didn't look at him. Another step. Closer now. Close enough to hear the faint sound of the rice being cut, the soft rustle of leaves, the quiet rhythm of a life that did not depend on him. For a moment, he forgot why he had come. Forgot the numbers, the plans, the deal waiting to be signed. All of it faded into the background, replaced by something unfamiliar. Not discomfort, not curiosity, something deeper. A sense that, for the first time in a long time, he was the outsider. And as he stood there, watching her move with effortless certainty in a world he didn't understand. Ethan Carter felt something he hadn't felt in years. Uncertain, she stood among the rice fields like she belonged to the land itself. A young woman, wearing a simple brown alba-billet, a non-la casting a soft shadow over her face. Her hands moved with quiet precision, harvesting rice one bundle at a time. Slow, steady, natural. She didn't look at him, didn't pause, didn't acknowledge his presence. Ethan frowned slightly. That was new. In his world, people noticed him, reacted to him, adjusted themselves around him. But here, he was irrelevant. He took a few steps closer. Still, she didn't look up. Only the soft slicing sound of rice stalks being cut. The rhythm of her work. Consistent. Unbroken. It was almost hypnotic. And strangely, unsettling. Ethan wasn't used to silence like this. Not this kind. Not the kind that didn't respond to him. Back in New York, silence meant power. People went quiet when he entered a room. Here, silence didn't mean anything. It didn't shift. It didn't bend. It simply existed, with or without him. He stepped closer again, his polished shoes sinking slightly into the wet soil. Mud clung to the edges. He noticed. He always noticed details like that. Imperfections. Inefficiencies. Things that needed to be fixed. But the girl? She moved as if nothing around her was wrong. As if everything was already exactly the way it should be. Ethan studied her more carefully now. The way her hands worked. Firm, but gentle. Each bundle of rice cut cleanly, then placed aside with care. There was no rush. No wasted movement. No hesitation. Just rhythm. And intention. How long have you been doing this? He asked. His voice cut through the air, sharper than the sound of the blade. For a moment, nothing changed. She kept working. One more bundle. Then another. Only after finishing the row in front of her did she finally pause. She straightened slowly, lifted a hand to wipe the sweat from her brow. Still, she didn't look directly at him. Long enough, she said. Her English was careful, measured, but clear. Ethan exhaled slightly. That answer wasn't useful. How many acres does this field cover? He asked. No response. She bent down again, continued cutting. The rhythm resumed. Ethan felt something tighten in his chest. A small irritation. Not anger. Not yet. Just resistance. You know this could be done faster, he added. That got her attention. Not immediately. But, after a few seconds, she stopped again. This time, she turned. Fully. Her eyes met his. Calm. Unreadable. And then what? She asked. Ethan blinked. What do you mean? If it's faster, she said, tilting her head slightly. Then what happens after that? Ethan opened his mouth and paused. It was a simple question, but it didn't fit. Not in the way he was used to thinking. It increases output, he said finally. Improves efficiency. Generates more value. She listened. Didn't interrupt. Didn't react. And then, she asked again. The same tone. The same calm certainty. Ethan hesitated. Just for a moment. Something about the way she asked made the answer feel incomplete. Then you scale it, he replied. Expand. Optimize further. She looked at him for a long second. Then shook her head. Not dismissively. Just quietly. No, she said. She stepped closer, the water shifting around her feet. The land gets tired. Ethan frowned. The water changes. She gestured lightly toward the field. The people can't keep up. Her voice didn't rise. Didn't accuse. It simply stated. And then, she continued, you replace everything with machines. Ethan didn't respond. For the first time since arriving, he didn't have an immediate answer. This is not just work, she said. Her voice softer now, but somehow stronger. This is balance. The word lingered in the air between them. Balance. Ethan glanced around. At the field. At the water. At the endless green stretching beyond what he could measure. He had never used that word in a deal. Not once. He looked back at her. You really believe that? He asked. She didn't hesitate. I live it. Silence returned. But it felt different now. Heavier. Ethan looked down at his shoes again. Still muddy. Still out of place. But this time, he didn't step back. He didn't try to clean them. Instead, he took one more step forward. Into the water. The coolness spread instantly. Unexpected. Grounding. The girl watched him. Not surprised. Not impressed. Just observing. Ethan bent slightly. Reached toward a stalk of rice. Mimicked what he had seen her do. Awkward. Imperfect. But intentional. The blade hesitated in his hand. Then moved. Slow. Careful. He lifted the cut bundle. Held it for a moment. It felt lighter than he expected, and heavier than it should. He looked at her again. And this time, he didn't ask a question. Because for the first time, he wasn't trying to understand the land. He was trying to understand why. He didn't understand it at all. Ethan stepped closer. Too close. Without looking at him, she spoke. You're standing too close. You'll damage the young rice. Her voice was calm, soft, but firm. Ethan stopped. Not because of what she said, but how she said it. No hesitation. No fear. No respect for his status. Just truth. He looked down. His polished shoe was pressing into the edge of the rice. He stepped back instinctively, then frowned again. Why did he feel corrected? That feeling didn't sit well with him. Not at all. Ethan Carter wasn't used to being corrected. Not by employees. Not by partners. And certainly not by a girl standing barefoot in a muddy rice field. Back in his world, people chose their words carefully around him. They adjusted their tone, their posture, even their opinions. But here, she didn't adjust anything. She didn't even look at him. And somehow, that bothered him more than open disrespect ever could. Ethan straightened his posture slightly. A reflex. An invisible armor sliding back into place. I'm just observing, he said. His voice carried authority. Sharp. Controlled. The kind of voice that usually shifted rooms. But the field didn't shift. The wind didn't stop. And she kept working. One cut. Then another. The rhythm of her movements continued as if his voice had never existed. I was told this land is under review, he added. Still nothing. Not immediately. Only after finishing the row in front of her did she pause. She stood up slowly, wiped a thin layer of sweat from her forehead. And finally, she turned slightly toward him. Not fully. Just enough. Everything is always under review, she said. Her voice carried the same quiet certainty. For people like you. There was no anger in it. No sarcasm. No attempt to challenge him. And that made it worse. Because Ethan couldn't push back against it. There was nothing to argue with. It wasn't an opinion. It felt like a fact. He narrowed his eyes slightly. You don't seem very concerned, he said. She bent down again. Resumed her work. Should I be? She replied. Ethan hesitated. That wasn't the answer he expected. Or maybe, he didn't know what answer he expected anymore. You could lose all of this, he said, gesturing around the field. The water, the rice, the life she stood in. She stopped again. But this time, she didn't look at him right away. Her fingers brushed gently against a young rice stalk. Almost like she was checking it. Or protecting it. Then she spoke. You think I own this? Ethan blinked. Of course you do, he said. It's your land, isn't it? Now she looked at him. Fully. For the first time. Her eyes met his. Not challenging. Not defensive. Just clear. No, she said. It's not mine. Ethan frowned. Then whose is it? She tilted her head slightly. As if the question itself didn't make sense. It belongs to the people who came before me, she said. And the people who will come after. Ethan exhaled quietly. That sounded poetic. Idealistic. Not practical. Legally, he said, someone owns it. She didn't argue. Didn't correct him. She simply stepped closer. Closer than she had been before. The water rippled around her ankles. And she reached down. Pulled up a small clump of soil. Separated a single young rice stalk. Then held it out toward him. Hold this. Ethan hesitated. Just for a second. But something in her gaze, steady, unwavering, made him reach out. He took it. It was damp. Light. Fragile. He expected to feel nothing. But instead, there was something else. A strange weight. Not physical, but real. The roots clung to the soil. Tiny threads refusing to let go. Water dripped slowly from the base. Like it didn't want to leave. Ethan stared at it longer than he meant to. This is what you're stepping on, she said. Her voice softer now, but somehow louder. Ethan swallowed. He looked down again. At his shoe. At the market left. Then back at the small plant in his hand. This can be replaced, he said. But his voice wasn't as certain as before. She shook her head slightly. No, she took a step closer. Close enough that he could hear the quiet movement of water around her. You can replace the plant, she said. But not the time. Ethan frowned. What does that mean? It means, she said, you don't understand what it took to get here. Her eyes didn't leave his. Or what it takes to keep it alive. Silence. The kind that didn't demand a response. The kind that forced one. Ethan looked at the plant again. Then slowly, without fully realizing why, he crouched down. The movement felt unnatural, unfamiliar, almost wrong, but he did it anyway. He lowered the plant back into the mud, pressed it gently into place. Awkward, imperfect, but careful. When he stood up again, his hands were dirty. Mud clung to his fingers. This time, he didn't brush it off. The girl watched him, her expression unchanged. But something shifted. Not in her. In him. Ethan looked out across the field again. The same field he had seen minutes ago. The same water. The same rows of green. But now, it didn't look as simple. It didn't look empty. And for the first time, Ethan Carter wasn't thinking about how to change it. He was wondering what would happen if he didn't. "Do you know who I am?" he asked. The question came out sharper than he intended. She finally looked at him. Her eyes were steady, clear, unmoved. Then she said, "A man who thinks this place has no value until he buys it." Silence. The wind moved through the rice. Ethan blinked. No one had spoken to him like that in years. Not investors. Not competitors. Not even his closest team. There was no hostility in her voice. No anger. Which made it worse. Because she wasn't attacking him. She was simply stating something she believed was true. And for the first time in a long time, Ethan didn't have an immediate response. That alone was unsettling. In every room he had ever walked into, words came easily. Sharp. Precise. Effective. He negotiated billion-dollar deals with calm certainty. He dismantled arguments before they were fully formed. But here, standing ankle-deep in muddy water, he found himself quiet. He studied her, trying to understand where that certainty came from. She didn't look educated in the way he was used to. No tailored suit. No polished presentation. No carefully chosen language. And yet, there was something unshakable in the way she stood. As if she didn't need to prove anything. As if the ground beneath her already did that for her. "You don't know anything about me," Ethan said finally. His voice was lower now. Controlled, but not as sharp. She didn't react immediately. She simply turned slightly, bent down, continued harvesting. The blade moved again. Clean, quiet, rhythmic. "You're right," she said. "I don't." Pause. Another bundle of rice fell neatly into her hand. "But I know people like you." Ethan felt that again. That unfamiliar tension in his chest. "What does that mean?" he asked. This time, there was no edge in his voice. Just curiosity. She straightened slowly. Not rushed. Not defensive. Just deliberate. "People who arrive," she said. "Look around. See numbers." She glanced at the field briefly. Not meaning. Ethan crossed his arms slightly. A subtle defensive gesture. "Meaning doesn't generate profit," he replied. She nodded, as if she expected that answer. Exactly. That word landed harder than it should have. Because she wasn't disagreeing. She was confirming something. Something he had always believed. But suddenly, it didn't sound as solid. "And that's why," she continued, "you think this place has no value." Ethan let out a quiet breath. "That's not what I said. You didn't have to." She looked at him again. Direct. Unwavering. "It's how you see it." Silence returned. But this time, it pressed in. Ethan glanced around. The field stretched endlessly. Green. Alive. Moving with the wind. Minutes ago, he saw potential. Now, he wasn't so sure what he was looking at. He turned back to her. "If I invest here," he said slowly, "I can improve everything." Her expression didn't change. Faster harvesting. Better irrigation. Higher output. Each word felt familiar. Safe. Controlled. He had said versions of this countless times before. And every time, he was right. But now, something felt off. "And then?" she asked. Ethan paused. Again, that same question. Simple, but disruptive. "And then it grows," he said. "We expand. Scale." She took a step closer. The water shifted gently around her feet. And after that, Ethan blinked. There it was again. That gap. That moment where the answer should have come, but didn't. "It continues," he said. But even he could hear it. The hesitation. The crack. She shook her head softly. No, her voice was calm. But final. "The land gets tired." Ethan frowned. "The water changes." She gestured around them. "The people leave." Each word landed slowly. Deliberately. "And then you bring in machines." Silence. "And then," she looked directly at him. "This becomes something else." Ethan didn't speak. For once, he didn't try to interrupt. Didn't try to correct. Didn't try to win. Because something about the way she said it felt real. Not theoretical. Not strategic. Lived. He looked down. At his shoes. Still marked with mud. then at his hands. Clean. Untouched. A contrast he hadn't noticed before. You really believe that? He asked. His voice quieter now. She didn't hesitate. I don't believe it. Pause. I see it. That answer hit differently. Because belief could be argued. But experience? That was harder to dismiss. The wind passed through the field again. The rice moved like a single body. Connected. Alive. Ethan watched it. Really watched it. For the first time since he arrived. And something shifted. Not dramatically. Not all at once. But enough. Enough to make him question something he hadn't questioned in years. Not the numbers. Not the strategy. But the assumption behind them. He looked back at her. This time. Not as someone to convince. Not as someone to evaluate. But as someone he might need to understand. And that realization, quiet as it was, felt more disruptive than any deal he had ever lost. Because for the first time, Ethan Carter wasn't trying to prove he was right. He was starting to wonder if he had been wrong all along. Come, one of the locals said. If you want to see everything, you need to take the boat. Ethan hesitated. The boat was small, wooden, unstable. Nothing about it looked reliable. Nothing about it looked like something he would ever step on. But he nodded. He wasn't going to back down. Not here. Not in front of them. Not in front of her. He stepped forward. Carefully. Measured. Controlled. Just like every move he had made his entire life. He placed one foot onto the boat. It shifted. Slightly. But enough. Ethan's body stiffened instantly. Every muscle tightened. This wasn't familiar. This wasn't stable. This wasn't something he could control. He adjusted. Shifted his weight back slightly. Then forward again. Trying to find balance. Trying to impose control on something that clearly didn't want to be controlled. The boat creaked softly. Water rippled beneath it. He placed his second foot down. Slowly. Deliberately. The boat rocked again. Harder this time. Careful, she said. Her voice calm. Not urgent. Not panicked. Just aware. But Ethan didn't look at her. Didn't respond. He didn't want help. He didn't need help. Not from her. Not from anyone. He had built his life on control. On precision. On dominance over uncertainty. And this was just a boat. He could handle a boat. He shifted his weight. Forward. Trying to stabilize himself. Trying to prove, to himself more than anyone, that he was still in control. And that's when it happened. The boat tilted. Not gently. Not gradually. Suddenly. Violently. His foot slipped. Just a fraction. But enough. His balance broke. His arms moved instinctively. Too late. His body twisted. The edge of the boat pressed against his leg. And then, he was falling. Time stretched. Just for a second. The sky above him. The reflection in the water. The shock on the faces around him. And her. Still standing there. Watching. Not surprised. Then, impact. Water exploded around him. Cold. Thick. Mud mixed with it instantly. His suit, soaked. Heavy. Useless. The world blurred for a moment. Sound muffled. Then rushed back all at once. Voices. Movement. Splashing. Ethan pushed himself up. Water dripping from his hair. From his face. From everything. His white shirt, no longer white. His polished image, gone. Destroyed in seconds. He stood there. In the shallow canal. Breathing harder than he expected. Not from the fall. But from something else. Something deeper. Something he couldn't immediately name. Around him, the locals froze. Uncertain. Careful. As if waiting for a reaction. For anger. For blame. For consequences. That's what usually followed moments like this. But then, something unexpected happened. She laughed. Not loudly. Not mockingly. Just naturally. A real laugh. Unfiltered. Uncontrolled. It wasn't cruel. It wasn't directed at him. It was simply honest. And somehow, that hit harder than the fall. Ethan looked at her. Really looked this time. Her shoulders relaxed. Her smile unforced. The sunlight catching the edges of her face. She wasn't trying to hide it. Wasn't trying to be polite. Wasn't trying to protect his ego. She just laughed. And for the first time in years, no one around him was trying to manage the situation. No one rushed to help. No one apologized. No one explained. There was no system here to protect him from embarrassment. No structure to maintain his image. Just reality. Raw. Immediate. Unfiltered. Ethan stepped out of the water slowly. Mud clinging to every step. His clothes heavy. His movements less controlled now. More human. She stopped laughing. But the trace of it remained. In her eyes. In the way she looked at him. Not with judgment. Not with superiority. Just recognition. Dat naive do? She said softly. Then, in English, this land is like that. He didn't respond. Didn't interrupt. Not steady, she continued. Not predictable. She took a step closer. The water barely moving around her feet. If you don't belong here, pause. Her eyes met his. You fall. Silence. The words settled slowly. Deeper than he expected. Ethan looked down. At his hands. Covered in mud. At his reflection in the water. Distorted. Unfamiliar. He should have been angry. Embarrassed. Frustrated. That's what made sense. That's what he knew. But instead, he felt something else. Something quieter. Something heavier. Not humiliation. Not exactly. It felt more like exposure. Like something had been stripped away. Not his clothes. Not his status. But something beneath that. Something he didn't realize he was holding on to. He looked back at her. You think this is funny? He asked. His voice wasn't sharp anymore. Just uncertain. She shook her head slightly. No pause. I think this is real. That word again. Real. Ethan let out a slow breath. The wind moved across the water. The boat drifted slightly behind him. Still unstable. Still unpredictable. Just like everything else here. And for the first time, Ethan Carter realized something. This wasn't just a fall. It was a moment. A line. The place where control ended, and something else began. He looked at the boat. Then at the field. Then at her. And quietly, without saying it out loud, he understood. This place wasn't going to adjust to him. It wasn't going to become easier, cleaner, more efficient. He would have to change, or he would keep falling. And somehow, that thought didn't scare him as much as it should have. His foot slipped. Time slowed. The world tilted. And then, splash. Water exploded around him. Mud surged upward. His suit, his perfect, expensive suit, instantly soaked. Brown water clung to his shirt. His hair. His face. Droplets hung in the air for a split second, catching the golden sunlight. Then crashed down. Chaos. Pure chaos. Ethan gasped. The cold hit him first. Sharp. Sudden. Nothing like the heavy heat he had been standing in moments before. His breath caught. His body reacted before his mind could. He pushed against the muddy bottom. Tried to find footing. But the ground shifted beneath him. Soft. Unstable. Unfamiliar. The boat drifted slightly away. Just out of reach. The world felt out of control. That was the worst part. Not the fall. Not the mud. Not even the shock. It was the loss of control. Ethan Carter had built his entire life on control. Every move calculated. Every risk measured. Every outcome predicted. But here, there was none of that. His hand reached for the edge of the boat. Missed. Slipped. Water splashed again. Louder this time. Closer. More real. Careful. A voice said from somewhere above. Calm. Too calm. Ethan didn't respond. Couldn't. He was focused on standing. On regaining balance. On regaining something. Anything. His foot pressed deeper into the mud. He pushed upward. Harder this time. Finally, he rose. Water streamed off him. His shirt clung tightly to his body. Heavy. Useless. His hair, usually perfectly styled, now fell across his forehead in wet strands. His watch, worth more than most people here would see in years, dripped slowly. Ticking. Still working. But somehow out of place. Ethan stood there, breathing heavier than he expected. The water reached just below his knees. Brown. Clouded. Alive with movement. He wiped his face with one hand. Mud smeared across his skin. He didn't notice at first. Or maybe he didn't care. Around him, everything had gone quiet. Too quiet. The kind of silence that comes after something unexpected. Something disruptive. He looked up. The locals stood still. Watching. Not rushing. Not panicking. Just observing. That confused him. Back home, a moment like this would trigger immediate reaction. People would move. Help. Apologize. Fix the situation. Here, no one moved. No one spoke. No one tried to restore order. Because there was no order to restore. Only reality. And then he heard it. A sound. Soft. Light. Unexpected. She laughed. Not loudly. Not sharply. Just naturally. A quiet burst of genuine amusement. Ethan turned toward her. Slowly. Water dripping from his sleeves. His fingers clenched slightly. Not in anger, but in confusion. She stood there. In the field. Exactly as she had before. Calm. Balanced. Untouched by the chaos that had just swallowed him whole. Her lips curved into a small smile. Not mocking. Not cruel. Just real. And that, somehow, hit harder than the fall. Ethan wasn't used to this. Not used to people reacting without calculation, without caution, without adjusting to him. Something funny, he asked. His voice came out quieter than expected. Less sharp. Less controlled. She shook her head slightly. The smile faded, but not completely. No pause. I've just seen this before. Ethan frowned. What does that mean? She stepped closer. The water barely moved around her, as if it recognized her, as if it accepted her. People come here, she said, thinking they understand the land. Her eyes met his. Clear. Unshaken. They don't. Ethan exhaled. A slow breath. Water dripped from his chin, from his sleeves, from everything he was wearing. He looked down at himself, at the mud, at the ruined suit, at the reflection in the water. Distorted. Unrecognizable. For a moment, he didn't see himself. Not the version he knew. Not the version the world knew. Just someone else. Someone out of place. This isn't exactly practical, he said. The words felt weak. Even to him. She didn't argue. Didn't defend. She simply said, it's not meant to be. Silence. Again. But different this time. Heavier. Ethan glanced at the boat. Still drifting slightly. Still unstable. Then back at her. Standing firm. Unmoved. Unaffected. You're not surprised, he said. It wasn't a question. She shook her head. No pause. This place doesn't change for you. Her voice softened slightly. You change for it. That sentence stayed with him. Longer than it should have. Longer than anything else she had said. Ethan stood still. Water cooling around his legs. The sun still warm above. Two different worlds. Meeting in the same moment. And for the first time, he didn't rush to fix it. Didn't try to regain control. Didn't try to restore his image. He just stood there. Feeling it. The discomfort. The imbalance. The unfamiliar weight of not knowing. And slowly, something shifted. Not outside, but inside. A small crack. In something that had always felt solid. Always certain. Always right. He looked at her again. This time, not as someone beneath him. Not as someone irrelevant. But as someone who understood something he didn't. And that realization, quiet, uncomfortable, unavoidable, was more powerful than the fall itself. Because the water would dry. The suit could be replaced. But this moment, this loss of control, this question forming in his mind, that was something else. Something he couldn't wash away. Something that stayed. And as the last droplets fell back into the water, Ethan Carter realized this wasn't just chaos. This was the beginning of something he was no longer sure he could control. For a moment, no one moved. The water settled. The ripples widened, then faded. The world held its breath. Then she laughed. A real laugh. Warm. Unfiltered. Not cruel. Not mocking. Just honest. It cut through the silence in a way nothing else could. Ethan froze. Still half in the water. Still dripping. Still trying to make sense of what had just happened. He looked at her. Really looked. And something about that laugh felt unfamiliar. Uncontrolled. Uncalculated. He couldn't remember the last time someone laughed like that around him. In his world, laughter had structure. Timing. Purpose. People laughed when it was appropriate. When it was safe. When it maintained the atmosphere. But this was different. This didn't maintain anything. It revealed something. And he didn't know how to respond to it. He pulled himself up slowly. The mud resisted. Clung to his shoes. To his legs. To everything. Water dripped from his suit in uneven streams. His shirt, once crisp and perfect, now stained in shades of brown. Heavy. Ruined. But somehow, that didn't feel like the biggest problem anymore. This place, she said, still smiling slightly, is like that. Her voice softened the air around them. No judgment. No explanation. Just a statement. If you don't belong, you fall. The words hit differently now. Not like a warning. Not like a lesson. More like a truth he had just experienced, without permission. Ethan stepped out of the water. Slow. Deliberate. Each movement heavier than usual. Not because of the mud, but because of something else. Something he hadn't felt in a long time. He looked down at himself again. At the mess. At the loss of control. At the version of him that didn't fit. And then he looked back at her. She was still standing there. Balanced. Unaffected. Like the fall had never happened. Because for her, it hadn't. You think this proves something? He asked. His voice came out quieter than he expected. Less defensive. More searching. She tilted her head slightly. No, a pause. It shows something. That answer lingered. Different from what he expected. What does it show? He asked. She stepped closer. The water barely reacted to her presence. It shows you're not in control here. Ethan exhaled slowly. A familiar instinct rose in him, to push back, to explain, to reclaim the moment. But it didn't come. Not fully. Because deep down, he knew she was right. He looked toward the boat. Still drifting slightly. Still unstable. Then back at the field. The rows of rice moving with the wind. Consistent. Alive. Unbothered. Everything here moved on its own rhythm. Not his. Never his. And you are? He asked. The question slipped out. Not sharp. Not challenging. Just curious. She didn't answer right away. She bent slightly. Touched the water with her fingers. Then lifted them. Let the droplets fall back down. I don't control it, she said. I follow it. Ethan frowned slightly. That sounds like giving up control. She shook her head. That sounds like understanding it. Silence. Again. But this time, it didn't feel uncomfortable. It felt necessary. Ethan ran a hand through his wet hair. Mud smeared slightly across his forehead. He didn't wipe it away. He didn't fix anything. For once, he didn't try. Back where I come from, he said slowly. We build systems so things don't go wrong. She nodded. I know. He glanced at her. You've seen that. I've seen what happens after, she replied. He waited. But she didn't continue. And somehow, that unfinished sentence said more than anything else. Ethan looked out across the field again. The same field. The same water. The same place he had stepped into, thinking he understood. And yet, everything felt different now. Not changed. Just revealed. He took a step forward. Back into the shallow water. This time, carefully. Not forcing balance. Not controlling movement. Just adjusting. The mud shifted under his foot. But he didn't fight it. He paused. Let his body adapt. Let the instability settle. She watched him. Quietly. Not helping. Not interfering. Just observing. And after a moment, he steadied. Not perfectly. Not confidently. But enough. Ethan looked up. Met her eyes again. And this time, there was no tension. No challenge. Just recognition. You're right, he said. The words surprised even him. She didn't react. Didn't smile. Didn't acknowledge it. She simply turned and went back to her work. The rhythm returned. Steady. Unbroken. Ethan stood there for a few seconds longer. Water moving around him. Sunlight fading slightly. And for the first time, he didn't feel the need to rush. Didn't feel the need to prove anything. Didn't feel the need to win. He just stood and watched and listened. And slowly, something inside him shifted. Not loudly. Not dramatically. But enough to change direction. Because for the first time, Ethan Carter wasn't trying to control the moment. He was trying to understand it. And that was something entirely new. The sun was lower now, casting a golden glow across the fields. The harsh heat of midday had softened, replaced by something quieter, warmer. The light stretched across the water, turning every ripple into a flicker of gold. They stood facing each other again. But something had changed. This time, Ethan didn't step closer. Didn't try to take control of the space. Didn't try to assert anything. He just stood, present, still. So what happens if I buy this land? He asked. The question came out slower than usual. Not sharp, not strategic, just honest. She looked at him for a long moment, long enough that he almost thought she wouldn't answer. Then she spoke. You can buy the land. Her voice was calm, certain. She gestured lightly around them. The fields, the water, the endless green stretching beyond what either of them could fully see. But you can't buy this. The wind moved gently through the rice. A soft wave passed across the field. The water followed, reflecting the fading light. The way we live, she continued, doesn't belong to money. Silence. Not empty. Full. Heavy. Ethan turned slowly. And for the first time since arriving, he really looked. Not as an investor. Not as someone calculating value. But as someone trying to understand. The fields moved like a living thing. Not chaotic. Not random. Rhythmic. Intentional. He noticed the people in the distance. Working. Talking. Moving at a pace that didn't match the urgency he was used to. There was no rush. No pressure. No visible drive to maximize anything. And yet, nothing felt wasted. Nothing felt neglected. Everything existed in a quiet alignment. It wasn't inefficient. That word suddenly felt wrong. It was something else. Something he hadn't considered. Balanced. The realization didn't come all at once. It unfolded. Slowly. Like everything else here. Ethan let out a quiet breath. one he didn't realize he had been holding. In my world, he said, if something can be improved, we improve it. She nodded slightly. I know. He glanced at her. You don't agree? She tilted her head. I don't disagree. Pause. I just ask, what do you lose when you improve? That question settled deeper than the others. Because it didn't challenge him. It didn't reject his thinking. It expanded it. Ethan looked down at the water, at the faint distortion of his reflection. Still not fully clear. Still not fully steady. I've spent my entire life building things, he said quietly. Making them bigger, faster, more efficient. She didn't interrupt. Didn't respond. Just listened. And it always worked, he added. There was a hint of uncertainty now. Small, but present. He looked back at her. But this, he gestured around them. This doesn't feel like something that needs to be fixed. The words surprised him, more than anything she had said, because they didn't come from logic. They came from something else. Something he wasn't used to trusting. She studied him. Not impressed. Not convinced. Just observing. That's because it's not broken, she said. Simple. Direct. Final. Ethan exhaled slowly. The weight in his chest shifted. Not gone. But different. He glanced toward the horizon. The sun dipping lower. The light softening further. The field changing with it. Adapting. Without force. Without control. Then why does it feel like I'm supposed to change it? He asked. She smiled slightly. Not amused. Not dismissive. Just knowing. Because that's what you've always done. Silence again. But this time, it didn't feel like a gap. It felt like space. Space for something new. Ethan nodded slowly. That made sense. Too much sense. He had built an identity around changing things. Improving systems. Optimizing outcomes. It was who he was. Or at least, who he thought he was. But standing here, in a place that didn't need him, that identity felt incomplete. He took a step forward. Not toward her. Not toward control. Just forward. Into the moment. The water shifted around his feet again. But he didn't resist it. Didn't correct it. He adjusted. Let it move. Let himself move with it. She watched him. Quiet. Patient. As if she had already seen this before. Not him, but this moment. This shift. So what do I do? He asked. The question was different now. Not about strategy. Not about decisions. About something deeper. She didn't answer right away. She looked out across the field. Then back at him. You stop trying to own it. Pause. And you learn how to belong to it. The words stayed. Long after she said them. Ethan stood there. The field stretching around him. The light fading. The rhythm continuing. Unchanged. Uninterrupted. And for the first time, he wasn't thinking about what he could take from this place. He was thinking about what he didn't understand. And somehow, that felt more important than anything he had come here for. The sun dipped lower. The shadows grew longer. And Ethan Carter realized he hadn't come here to change the land. He had come here to be changed by it. That night, his phone rang. The sound cut through the quiet like something out of place. Sharp. Precise. Familiar. Ethan stood alone in the field. The sky burned with the last light of the sun. Gold fading into deep orange. Then slowly, into purple. The air had changed. Cooler now. Softer. The kind of stillness that didn't exist in his world. He looked at the phone in his hand. The screen glowing against the fading light. A name he recognized immediately. A call he had been expecting. He answered. The contract is ready, the voice said. Clean. Direct. No emotion. Tomorrow, you sign. Ethan didn't answer immediately. That, in itself, was unusual. In every deal he had ever been part of, speed mattered. Confidence mattered. Hesitation meant weakness. And Ethan Carter did not hesitate. But now he said nothing. He looked out at the rice fields. The same place. The same water. The same endless stretch of green. But it didn't look the same anymore. Something had shifted. Not outside. Inside. The wind moved gently across the surface. The rice followed. Like a single, living thing. Steady. Unforced. He remembered the fall. The sudden loss of balance. The moment everything slipped beyond control. The cold shock of water. The weight of mud. And then, the laugh. Warm. Unfiltered. Real. Not directed at him. Not meant to embarrass him. Just honest. That laugh echoed in his mind now. Stronger than the voice on the phone. Stronger than the deal waiting for him. You can buy the land, her voice followed. But not the way we live. Ethan tightened his grip on the phone. His jaw set slightly. A reflex. A familiar attempt to regain control. Ethan, the voice pressed. We need confirmation. Still, he didn't answer. That silence stretched. Longer than it should have. Longer than anyone on the other end would expect. Because in their world, decisions were immediate. Calculated. Final. But here, standing in the fading light, nothing felt immediate. Nothing felt simple. He glanced down at his hand. The faint memory of mud still lingered. Not visible, but present. He could almost feel it. The texture, the weight, the resistance. Something that didn't disappear just because he wanted it to. He exhaled slowly. I'll review it in the morning, he said. His voice steady, controlled, but not as certain as before. There was a pause on the other end. A small one, but noticeable. That's not what we discussed, the voice replied. We're already aligned. Aligned. The word felt distant, like it belonged to a different version of him. I said I'll review it, Ethan repeated. This time, firmer. The call ended shortly after. Efficient. Professional. Exactly the way his world operated. Ethan lowered the phone. The silence returned. But it wasn't empty. It carried weight now. He looked out across the field again. And this time, he didn't see opportunity. He saw consequence. The people in the distance were gone now. The work for the day finished. But the field remained. Alive. Waiting. Unchanged by his presence. Unchanged by his decision. And yet, everything felt connected to it. He stepped forward. Slowly. The ground softer in the dark. Less visible. More uncertain. He didn't stop. The water met his feet again. Cool. Familiar now. He stood there. In the middle of it. No one watching. No one expecting anything from him. No pressure. No performance. Just him. And the quiet. And for the first time in his career, Ethan Carter didn't think about winning. Didn't think about growth. Didn't think about numbers. He thought about something else. Something he had ignored for years. What does this cost beyond money? The question stayed. Unanswered. Uncomfortable. Real. He looked up at the sky. The last light fading completely now. Darkness settling in. Slow. Natural. Unstoppable. Just like everything else here. You can buy the land. The words came back again. But not the way we live. Ethan closed his eyes for a moment. Not to escape the thought, but to sit with it. To feel it. To understand it. And when he opened them again, something had changed. Not the field. Not the night. Him. Just slightly. But enough. Enough to create doubt. Enough to break certainty. Enough to stop him, right at the edge of a decision he would normally make without thinking. He looked at the phone again. Still in his hand. Still holding everything he had built. Everything he knew. Everything that defined him. And yet, it felt heavier now. Not because of what it offered, but because of what it might take away. The wind moved again. The rice shifted. The water followed. Everything continued. Without him. Without waiting. Without needing his decision. And that was what unsettled him the most. For the first time in his life, Ethan Carter realized something. This deal wasn't just about buying land. It was about choosing who he was willing to become. He stood there, in the dark, in the quiet, between two worlds. And for the first time, he hesitated.